Question 3. What have you learned from your audience feedback? Creating the poster was a challenging process for us because we all had very different ideas and concepts for the poster. I, for example, wanted to put the main character on the poster screaming with static behind her, which is similar to the poster for Unfriended, which shows a woman screaming and static over her eyes. However, my group had different ideas. They wanted to clearly show their audience the two different identities by placing the identities against each other. Our first draft poster included the two versions of Mila back to back, positioned in the middle of a landscape poster. The background is a picture of a bush, which looks like a forest, and the name of the actors were in random places all over the poster, and the font for the tagline was a graffiti style. At the draft stage, our audience feedback was mostly adversely critical. We asked a sample from the target audience what they thought of the poster. They responded that they did not like the graffiti font because it was messy and hard to read, and also they did not like that the names were all over the place. As this was our first time using Photoshop, we considered this poster as practice. We learned how to use a lasso tool to cut out the background, and we were not able to blur the edges of Mila. They also mentioned that the 15 rating was too big and should be placed in the bottom left-hand corner of the page. Another thing that they criticized was the placement and positioning of the characters and the title. The characters are in the middle and do not blend into the background, and the title is too small and should be placed in an appropriate place where it can be seen properly. They also did not think it was appropriate to include "coming soon" in the poster because the audience typically like to know when the film is coming out so that they can plan when to watch it. However, they did like the binary opposition presented within the poster, so it made it clear that there are two identities. They said the tagline was simple and catchy. After the feedback for our first draft, we went on to improving the poster. However, I personally felt that instead of putting the characters back to back, one identity could be emerging from the shadow to connote that one of the two Milas is more dominant. An alternative interpretation could be that she is cowering away into the shadow because she is afraid or less in control. I wanted the image to be left ambiguous for the audience to make their own reading. This poster was made by me, and it was a practice poster so that I could present to my group and show them my idea of the shadow symbolism, and I wanted to show them the font ideas because the target audience did not like the font for the first poster because they thought it was too comical and not scary enough. We were hesitant to change it because we felt it fit into our genre and knew that it could work somehow if we changed the position of the images. I used the standard font Bellum T. This font was used on the American Psycho poster, and I copied and pasted the font twice and made one color white and the other maroon red to establish the binary opposition. I placed it on top of each other but slightly shifted so that it looks like a bizarre shadow. The tree in the background was only a default image taken from Google Images as I was practicing how to fade it into the background. We showed our posters to university students studying media. They gave us very helpful tips to place the images on our poster and gave us a quick demo on how to fade pictures in Photoshop. They mentioned that they liked the message and the image we were trying to create. With this poster, we decided to do portrait instead of landscape because both the characters are standing vertically, and it made more sense because then it would mean the poster has more coverage of the image. As you can see with the previous draft posters, we could not make the images of the characters any bigger because it wouldn't fit when we tried to cover the whole page. They also said that our audience typically reads the poster from the top left-hand corner and make their way down. Therefore, it is important that the most important information is at the bottom because the audience are able to remember it better. They suggested using the universal font for the names of the actors that most films use in their posters. They said that they liked the tagline, but it was unnecessary to include the second part of the tagline, which was, "But unfortunately, Mila's bullies discover both." We removed this because it was too long and it gives away the plot of the film. They posed an idea that mentioned both the identities against each other but in different colors to connote one is evil and one is bad. Therefore, one would be a faint red hue and the other a faint blue hue. The feedback to our second draft gave us a lot to think about and helped us to produce draft 3. This is our draft poster 3. There is a stark difference between draft posters 2 and 3 because of firstly the font of the credits. We used the Universal Film Credits as a font for our film after we received feedback from students about the font. This makes the credit easier to read and makes the poster look cleaner. We changed the font of the tagline to match the title, which is Cabanial Z, which is now easier to read. We also included a new image of our actress. When we were looking over our pictures of our actress, we decided not to use this picture as we felt it was comical. However, we later discussed with our target audience whether or not we should use it. We asked our peers and they liked the idea of her looking insane because it fits with our narrative. She has manic depression and is confused about herself. We placed the two Milas that we originally planned to position back to back, and we decided to use them as shoulder angel and devil. This is typically used in films and TV shows to guide people to make the right choices. Sometimes the immoral side wins and sometimes the good conscience wins, but it is up to the person. We decided to use this to convey Mila's confusion, and she is screaming, partly because she is conflicted and confused by the contradicting forces in her life, but also because she knows that she committed a bad deed and is horrified by her actions. Our final poster is slightly different and changed from draft 3. We received feedback from our peers, who said they wanted blood dripping from the S because we include blood and gore in our film, and we wanted to show our audience that we include violence. Audiences typically like blood and violence and gore because it is cathartic and they like the suspense and tension that builds up to the violence. We also changed the colour and font of the tagline to a much simpler font and red to white gradient to show the blood bleeding through the font and also connotes the two different identities. We changed the colour of the shoulder angel and devil to blue and red to present binary opposition and make it clear the difference between good and bad. We created a draft script of our radio trailer and gave it to the sample target audience. They mentioned that they didn't understand the term ambient sounds. We then clarified that the ambient sounds are leaves crunching on the floor. From this I learned that I must not be general when it comes to sounds. It's important to describe the sounds of the leaves crunching from the film so that the audience are able to decipher what the sound is. Describing sounds was sometimes a difficult task, as we always couldn't exactly pinpoint what kind of sound we wanted because it was difficult to describe the sound to other group members. In our draft version of the trailer, we realized that an important aspect of horror to build tension wasn't included, which was to manipulate silence. Our first draft started off with breaking news just in, 2 girls murdered in East London. We received feedback about this being too revealing. The trailer should slowly reveal to the audience. So we decided to include 2 girls just murdered in the second half of the trailer so that the audience can make sense of the narrative. As a group, it was highly important to understand the audience's perspective. This ensures that we are conforming to conventions correctly and aiming at the audience. So we decided to start off the pace slow, and in the middle it gets faster and the tension starts to build through screaming and loud breathing. Through our target audience, we decided not to use our original plan of using a twisted nursery rhyme of Jack and Jill because it did not fit with our narrative. We wanted to use this twisted nursery rhyme to connote she has experienced a rough childhood. We later were inspired by the film Hannah to create a similar tune, The Devil is in the Details, sung by the Chemical Brothers. Overall, we received a positive feedback of the draft version. When we spoke to the university students studying media, they said it has a good build-up of tension from silence to sudden blaring music, and it gives context in the beginning and reinforces the context at the end. They also liked the beginning where we reverb 3 times, breaking news just in.
Breaking news coming in this morning from East London, where 2 young girls were brutally...
Each time it sounded distorting and disturbing. They mentioned that the trailer gives a good idea of what our film is about without giving everything away. We asked the audience whether or not the final poster and radio trailer convinced them to watch the film. Majority replied that the trailer was much more convincing to make them watch the film. They said that after they heard everybody has a good and a bad side, they pieced together that the film involves a person who has a secret persona as a bad person and outwardly shows that they are good. One target audience member said that it is a much different plot from many other horror films because our film follows the antagonist story as well as a protagonist story. We challenge Prop's character theory. Props proposes the idea that in every film there is always a type of character. Prop came up with the main 8: the hero, the villain, the helper, the donor, the princess, the father, the dispatcher, and the false hero, all of whom we do not portray in our film, because in our film the villain and the hero is one character, and in this one character inhabits 2 identities. The helper is a reporter which helps Mila remember what has happened. Therefore, our character is not conventional, which is why it compels the audience to watch the film. In the beginning, we produced rough cut rushes of our film. We put together the scenes we needed, with no filters, no sounds, no transitions, to get an idea of how lengthy our film is, and to get an idea of how to edit it. We showed our rough edit to our target audience that we gathered. They mentioned that they liked the scene when Mila drops her fork and when she looks at the TV trying to open her pills, because even without the music, this scene was dramatic, and it came across as being very dramatic, and they wanted to find out what happens next. They said that in the beginning it was boring because she carries out normal tasks such as making herself breakfast and getting ready to go outside. We decided that when Mila wipes the butter on the toast, there should be a small flashback when Mila stabs the bully. This would build tension, and it also confuses the audience that she is acting normal at home and yet is capable of murder. After including the transitions and filters, the film started to come together. We showed our target audience and they replied that they did not understand the difference between the two identities. It is confusing for the audience. When talking to the university media students, they also did not understand there are two identities in the film. We as a group discussed that we must clearly show the audience that there are two identities involved in this film. We decided to film an extra scene to include in the beginning when Mila talks to her other identity about getting revenge. This shows the audience that Mila carries out the murders because she was peer pressured by her identity. We also show Mila taking pills. The pills are a motif in the film. It controls her other identity from controlling her, and therefore she takes the pills so that she has control over her own body. The rating of the film was an important discussion because some of the target audience felt that it should be rated 18 because of the stabbing scene where the knife is clearly seen being entered the bully's body and blood spilling out. And some argued that she excessively consumes pills, which is unhealthy and could potentially cause death. However, most of the target audience said that the film was not very scary and the stabbing scene was not overwhelming for the audience. We decided to change the rating to 15 because Mila takes only 2 pills and the scene when Mila stabs the bully is not prolonged and we do not show the aftermath of the death. In our final edit of our film, we edited the music and made changes that the audience gave feedback on. We gathered an audience who have not watched our film and played the film to them. We received feedback from our target audience on the final edit of our film. They watched it and said in the beginning of the film when Mila is talking to herself, the volume is too quiet and the music is too loud. We took on their query and dubbed the voice because when we were recording the scene, we were not able to connect the microphone. They also said that they really liked the photos used because it was made clear when a scene was a flashback and a dream. I asked them whether they understood the pills. I explained the pill was a motif in the film. They understood that the pills controlled her unstable mind because after she takes a pill, the earthquake and prism effect ceases. I personally felt that we received a preferred reading for our poster, radio trailer and film. Stuart Hall reception theory proposes that communication is a process involving encoding by producers and decoding by audiences. As producers, we want the audience to react a certain way to the text. I felt that the audience correctly understood in our final products the meaning behind certain scenes. We asked the target audience if they understood the pill motif. They replied that they understood that she always takes a pill right after she experiences a flashback or a dream, which connotes her instability. They also understood the good versus evil theme in our radio trailer and our poster with the shoulder angel and devil and also the tagline, everybody has a good and a bad side.